Imagine a quiet farm girl, her cheeks stinging from the cruel slaps of heartless bullies, standing alone in a dusty field, until, in a single, breathtaking second, she unleashes a hidden power that sends her tormentors crashing to the ground. This isn't just a story of revenge, it's a roller coaster of raw emotion, shocking twists, and a fierce fight for justice that will leave you speechless. Dive into Bullies slap farm girl's cheek. 1 second later, they hit the ground hard, a tale that'll grip your heart and soul. Subscribe now to our storytelling community for more electrifying narratives like this. Don't miss a single pulse-pounding moment! The sun hung low over the rolling fields of Willow Creek, Nebraska, casting a golden glow across the endless rows of corn that swayed like a restless sea. Clara Mayhew, 16 years old and wary as a fence post, knelt in the dirt, her calloused hands pulling weeds from the base of her family's struggling crops. Her auburn hair, tied back in a loose braid, was streaked with dust, and her faded denim overalls bore the stains of a life spent toiling under the unforgiving sun. Clara was no stranger to hard work. The Mayhew farm, a modest 40-acre plot, was all her family had left after her father's passing 3 years prior. Her mother, Ellen, worked double shifts at the diner in town, leaving Clara to tend the fields and care for her younger brother, Tommy, who was barely 10 and small for his age. Life wasn't easy, but Clara had learned to carry the weight of it with a quiet strength that belied her slight frame. Willow Creek High School, however, was a different kind of battlefield. The school, a squat brick building on the edge of town, was where Clara's resilience was tested daily, not by the work but by the people. The town was small, and its social hierarchy was rigid. At the top sat the Golden Circle, a clique of wealthy kids led by Brittany Caldwell, a 17-year-old with platinum blonde hair, a sharp tongue, and a family name that owned half the county. Brittany and her posse. Jake, a hulking football star with a cruel streak, Leela, her sneering best friend, and Ethan, a sly charmer who hid his malice behind a disarming smile, ruled the school with an iron grip. Clara, with her patched clothes and farm dirt hands, was an easy target. They called her Muck Girl, mocked her for smelling like hay, and tripped her in the hallways when teachers weren't looking. Clara endured it all with a clenched jaw, her green eyes burning with a fire she kept carefully banked. She wasn't one for confrontation, not yet. It was a humid September afternoon when the trouble began. Clara was walking home along the dirt path that cut through the old Miller field, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her thoughts on the chores waiting at home. Tommy had stayed late for a science club meeting, so she was alone, the crunch of gravel under her boots the only sound. She didn't notice the sleek black SUV idling at the crossroads until it was too late. Brittany stepped out first, her designer jeans and glossy boots a stark contrast to the dusty surroundings. Jake, Leela, and Ethan followed, their laughter sharp and predatory. "Well, look who it is," Brittany drawled, her voice dripping with venom. "Muck Girl, all alone. Where's your little runt brother to hide behind?" Clara's stomach tightened, but she kept walking, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She'd learned long ago that responding only made it worse. But Brittany wasn't in the mood to be ignored. She stepped into Clara's path, forcing her to stop. "I'm talking to you, farm rat," she snapped, her manicured hand darting out to shove Clara's shoulder. Clara stumbled but caught herself, her fists clenching at her sides. "Leave me alone, Brittany," she said quietly, her voice steady but low. The others laughed, circling her like vultures. "Oh, she speaks," Leela mocked, tossing her hair. Jake cracked his knuckles, grinning. Maybe she needs a lesson in respect. Before Clara could react, Brittany's hand lashed out, slapping her hard across the cheek. The sting was sharp, a hot bloom of pain that made Clara's eyes water. She staggered, her hand flying to her face, where a red mark was already forming. The group laughed louder, their voices a cruel chorus. "That's for thinking you belong here," Brittany spat, raising her hand again. But something in Clara snapped. Her vision sharpened, the world slowing as a strange heat surged through her veins. It wasn't just anger, it was something deeper, something primal, like a long, dormant ember flaring to life. Before Brittany's hand could strike again, Clara's arm shot up, catching the wrist mid-air with a grip like iron. The group froze, their laughter dying. Clara's eyes, usually soft and guarded, now blazed with an intensity that made Brittany flinch. In one fluid motion, Clara twisted Brittany's arm and shoved her back, sending her sprawling into the dirt. Jake lunged forward, roaring, but Clara sidestepped with unnatural speed, her foot hooking his ankle. He hit the ground hard, a cloud of dust rising around him. Leela screamed, rushing at Clara, but a single, forceful push sent her stumbling into Ethan, who caught her but stared at Clara in shock. In less than a second, the golden circle was on the ground, dazed and humiliated, while Clara stood over them, breathing hard, her cheeks still stinging but her heart pounding with a strange, exhilarating power. Word of the incident spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. By the next morning, the school was buzzing with whispers. Some said Clara had gone feral, others that she'd been hiding some kind of martial arts training. Brittany and her crew, bruised and furious, spun a story about Clara attacking them unprovoked. But the truth was hard to hide when half the town had seen the welts on Jake's ego and the dirt on Brittany's designer jeans. Clara, for her part, said nothing. She went to school, tended the farm, and kept her head down, but inside she was reeling. What had happened in that field? The strength, the speed, it wasn't just adrenaline. It felt like something had awakened in her, something she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. At home, Tommy noticed the change in her. "You okay, Clara?" he asked one evening, his big blue eyes wide with concern. She ruffled his hair, forcing a smile. "Just tired, kiddo," she lied. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the cracked ceiling of her bedroom, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. Something that would change everything. The days that followed were tense. Brittany and her crew kept their distance, but their glares were venomous, and Clara knew they were plotting revenge. She tried to focus on her routine, school, farm, Tommy, but the memory of that moment in the field haunted her. She'd always been strong for a girl her size. Years of hauling hay bales and wrestling stubborn goats had seen to that. But this was different. It was as if her body had moved on instinct, guided by a force she didn't control. She started testing herself in secret, lifting heavier loads than usual, running faster through the fields, even practicing quick movements in the barn late at night. Each time she felt that same heat in her veins, that same surge of power. It scared her as much as it thrilled her. Clara's only refuge was the farm itself, a place where she could lose herself in the rhythm of the work. One Saturday morning, while digging in the far corner of the north field to repair a broken irrigation pipe, she found something strange. Her shovel hit metal, a dull clang that echoed in the quiet morning. Frowning, she dug deeper, uncovering a small, rusted box buried beneath the roots of an old oak tree. It was heavy, its surface etched with strange symbols that looked like nothing she'd ever seen. Not English, not even the Latin from her biology textbook. The box was locked, but the hinges were so corroded that a sharp tug with her crowbar popped it open. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed but intact, and a small, smooth stone that pulsed faintly with a greenish glow. Clara's breath caught. The stone felt warm in her hand, and when she touched it, that familiar heat surged through her, stronger than ever. She stuffed the journal and stone into her backpack, her heart racing. This wasn't just a find. It was a secret, one tied to whatever had happened in the field. That night, after Tommy was asleep and her mother was at the diner, Clara sat at the kitchen table, the journal open before her. The handwriting was her grandfather's, a man she barely remembered, who'd died when she was 5. His name, Amos Mayhew, was scrawled on the first page, along with a date, 1963. The journal was a mix of farm records and something far stranger, notes about the gift, a power Amos claimed ran in the Mayhew bloodline. He described moments of unnatural strength, speed, and instincts that had saved his life during a storm in '58 and a bar fight in '62. He wrote of the stone, calling it a conduit, that amplified the gift and warned that it came with a cost the more it was used, the harder it was to control. The final entry was chilling. They're watching. The circle knows. I buried it to keep Clara safe. Clara's hands trembled as she read her own name. Who was the circle? And why had her grandfather hidden this from her? The next day, Clara couldn't focus. At school, she caught Brittany whispering to Jake in the cafeteria, their eyes darting to her. She overheard snippets of their plan, something about humiliating her at the upcoming Harvest Festival, where the whole town would be watching. Clara's grip tightened on her tray. She wasn't just fighting bullies anymore. She was unraveling a mystery that felt bigger than Willow Creek. That evening, She took the stone to the barn, holding it tightly as she tested its power. She lifted a 200-pound hay bale with one hand, tossed it across the barn, and caught it without breaking a sweat. The stone pulsed brighter, and she felt invincible. But also unsteady, like the power was a wild horse she could barely rein in. She hid the stone and journal in a loose floorboard, vowing to keep them secret until she understood more. But secrets don't stay buried in small towns. Ethan, the quietest of Brittany's crew, had been watching Clara more closely since the incident. He'd seen her slip into the barn late at night, noticed the way she moved with a new confidence. Ethan was smarter than the others, and his family had deep roots in Willow Creek. Roots that whispered of old grudges and older secrets. His grandfather, a retired sheriff, had once told him stories of the Mayhews, of strange happenings on their farm, of a curse that made them dangerous. Ethan didn't believe in curses, but he believed in leverage. He started tailing Clara, noting her late-night barn visits, her sudden strength. He didn't tell Brittany yet. He wanted proof first. But as he watched, he began to suspect that Clara was more than just a farm girl, and that whatever she'd found was something his family had been searching for since before he was born. The Harvest Festival was Willow Creek's biggest event, a weekend of hayrides, pie contests, and a dance under a massive tent in the town square. For Clara, it was a rare chance to feel normal, to blend in with the crowd and forget her troubles. But this year, she arrived with the weight of the journal and stone heavy on her mind. She wore her best dress, a simple green cotton number her mother had sewn, and kept the stone tucked in a small pouch under her waistband just in case. Tommy was at her side, chattering about the cotton candy stand, oblivious to the storm brewing around his sister. Brittany had planned her revenge meticulously. The festival's main event was the Strength Show, a lighthearted competition where locals tested their might by ringing a bell with a sledgehammer or tossing hay bales. Brittany had convinced Jake to rig the event, ensuring Clara would be called up to compete against him in front of the whole town. The plan was simple. Jake would crush her, Brittany would mock her, and the town would laugh, cementing Clara's place as an outcast. What Brittany didn't know was that Ethan had his own agenda. He'd found an old photo in his grandfather's attic, showing Amos Mayhew holding a glowing stone, surrounded by men in dark suits. The photo was labeled, The Circle, 1963. Ethan didn't know what it meant, but he was certain Clara had the stone, and he wanted it. As the festival began, Clara felt the eyes of the town on her. Whispers about the field incident had grown into wild rumors, and she caught curious glances from neighbors who'd once ignored her. The strength show started, and Jake, all swagger, rang the bell with ease, flexing for the cheering crowd. Then Brittany, microphone in hand, called out, "Let's see if Muck Girl can keep up." The crowd tittered, and Clara's cheeks burned, not from shame, but from the heat of the stone against her skin. She stepped forward, her heart pounding. Jake tossed a hay bale, landing it 20 feet away. Clara gripped her own bale, the stone pulsing in her pouch. She threw it, not just 20 feet, but 30, the bale soaring over the crowd and landing with a thud that silenced everyone. The crowd erupted, half in awe, half in disbelief. Jake's face reddened and Brittany's smile faltered. But the ambush wasn't over. As Clara stepped off the stage, Brittany shoved her into a dark corner behind the tent, where Jake and Leela were waiting. "You think you're tough now?" Brittany hissed, slapping Clara hard across the cheek. The pain was sharp, but the stone's heat flared, and Clara's vision went white-hot. She grabbed Brittany's wrist, twisting it just enough to make her yelp, then shoved Jake back when he lunged. Leela swung a punch, but Clara ducked, her movements fluid and precise. In seconds, the three were on the ground, groaning, while Clara stood over them, her breath ragged. The crowd, drawn by the commotion, gasped. Ethan, watching from the shadows, slipped away, his mind racing. He'd seen the glow under Clara's dress. He knew. That night, Clara confessed everything to her mother. Ellen listened, her face pale, as Clara showed her the journal and stone. To Clara's shock, Ellen wasn't surprised. "Your grandfather warned me this might happen," she said, her voice trembling. "The Mayhew gift, it's real, but it's dangerous. The circle, they're not just stories. They're people, powerful people who want that stone. Your grandfather died to keep it from them." Clara's head spun. Her grandfather's death, which she'd always been told was a heart attack, was no accident. Ellen begged her to hide the stone, to forget the gift, but Clara couldn't. The power was part of her now, and Brittany's crew wasn't her only threat anymore. Ethan didn't waste time. He took the photo to his grandfather, who confirmed the truth. The circle was a secret society, a group of wealthy families who'd been hunting the Mayhew stone for decades. It wasn't just a power source. It was a relic, tied to an ancient energy that could reshape the world. The circle believed it belonged to them, and they'd killed Amos to get it. Ethan's grandfather, once a member, had left the circle in disgust, but he warned Ethan to stay away. "They'll destroy anyone who stands in their way," he said. But Ethan was ambitious, and he saw the stone as his ticket to power. He told Brittany and Jake just enough to enlist their help, promising them a cut of the reward. Clara, meanwhile, was training. She spent nights in the barn, learning to control the stone's power, guided by her grandfather's journal. She could run faster than a deer, lift weights that would crush a grown man, and sense danger before it struck. But the more she used the stone, the more she felt its cost. Headaches, dizzy spells, and a growing sense of rage that scared her. She knew she couldn't hide forever. The circle was coming, and Brittany's crew was their pawn. The final confrontation came on a stormy night when lightning cracked over Willow Creek. Ethan, Brittany, and Jake ambushed Clara at the farm, breaking into the barn where she was training. Ethan held a gun, stolen from his grandfather's safe, and demanded the stone. "Hand it over, Clara, or we burn this place down," he said, his eyes cold. Brittany smirked, eager for revenge, while Jake cracked his knuckles. Clara's heart raced, but she felt the stone's heat steadying her. She tried to reason with them, but Ethan fired a warning shot into the barn wall. That was his mistake. The stone flared, and Clara moved like a blur, disarming Ethan and knocking him out with a single blow. Jake charged, but she flipped him over her shoulder, his bulk crashing through a stack of crates. Brittany screamed, swinging a pitchfork, but Clara caught it mid-air, snapping it in half. The fight was over in seconds. The bullies sprawled in the hay groaning, but the circle wasn't done. As Clara tied up her attackers, headlights pierced the storm. 3 men in dark suits stepped out, their leader a tall man with silver hair and eyes like ice. "The stone, Miss Mayhew," he said, his voice calm but deadly. "It's not yours." Clara stood her ground, the stone glowing in her hand. She didn't know if she could take them, but she knew she'd fight to protect her family. The leader raised a hand, and his men advanced, then stopped. A low rumble shook the ground, and the air crackled with energy. Clara's vision blurred, and she saw flashes of her grandfather, her ancestors, their strength flowing through her. The stone wasn't just power, it was a legacy. With a cry, she unleashed its full force, a shockwave that sent the men flying back into their car, which crumpled like paper. The leader scrambled to his feet, staring at her in terror. "This isn't over," he spat before fleeing into the night. Clara collapsed, the stone dimming in her hand. Her mother and Tommy ran to her, tears in their eyes. The bullies were handed over to the sheriff, who'd been tipped off by Ethan's grandfather. The circle vanished, but Clara knew they'd be back. She buried the stone again, deeper this time, vowing to protect it until she was ready to face them. The town, stunned by the stories, began to see Clara differently, not as muck girl, but as a hero. Brittany and her crew were expelled, their families shamed. Ethan, guilt-ridden, left town. Clara went back to her fields, her family, her life. But she was changed. The gift was hers, and she'd use it to protect those she loved, no matter what came next.